Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Two Lands, One Gospel. And today we are going to look at a second part of what we discussed last week, because last week we discussed when is there one true church, one true gospel, and then we noticed that differences doesn't matter. So the question that came out of that video is going to be, but does differences never matter? And I think it's going to be an interesting discussion because differences do matter. And I'm going to read us a quote from the InterVarsity Press series. And it's from the book that is about world religions, a pocket guide to world religions. And it's a very interesting quote because it shows why differences matter and why you should know who you are talking to and how they are different from you. So the quote goes, "It was New Year's Eve, 1999, the birth of the new millennium. A famous TV personality was interviewing the Dalai Lama, head of the Tibetan Buddhism. 'Would you tell me, Your Holiness,' fawned the reporter, 'do you celebrate New Year's in the Islamic religion?' It is of course possible that the interviewer thought that the Dalai Lama, though a Buddhist himself, was a good source of information about Islam. More likely, this could have been a slip of the tongue. But most probably, the reporter was genuinely confused." So I think this is a very humorous example, and I would like to see that clip if anyone can find it, about the reporter asking the Dalai Lama if Muslims celebrate New Year. I think it's very humorous, and this is why differences matter and why you should know who you are talking to and how you should approach this person. But before I get into more of that, I'm gonna give it to Karen so she can say hello and start the discussion.
Okay, so hi everyone and welcome again. So I was thinking about this short part of this little story, but this story show us how easily the people got can confused among of all the religions. So even the famous reporter, he didn't get this switch to say the Dali and the Islam. What's like we can say it doesn't have nothing in common. like, but in that way, and now just the reporter. Nowadays, all the people get this confusion about the religions and the practices, and yeah, we don't get deeper inside what they are doing or what are learning or studying or practicing, right? So if I ask right now for one of our listeners what's the biggest difference between the Buddhism and Islam, I don't know if someone can answer it's this, right? But yeah, this show takes the confusion in all the splendor. So like it reveals something deeper, right? Because we don't get the time to know each other when we are trying to introduce something. So uh, right now talking about this spiritual confusion also, right? Because we try to match something with another thing. So the difference, and all in the religions they want to practice it, so it matters this difference, because if we don't know the difference, we're going to go with this type of questions and we are going to, instead to make a good connection, we're going to, I'm not Buddhism, I'm not in the Islam, I really don't know how to answer this kind of question. So we need to know, we will need to learn what's the difference, what's the practices, what they're, yeah, what they are believing in these religions.
I also think an important reason to learn the differences between these religions is that Islam and Buddhism relate to Christianity in a very interesting way. Okay, I suspect the reporter is just one of those people who think that all religions is good, and he just wants to learn anything that's not his own religion, like so many Christian people do today. But when you talk with a Muslim, you are going to talk about the Bible differently, because Muslims almost worship the Quran, and the Quran is the holy book, and they have all of these rules of how they have to treat the actual book itself. And they will criticize us that we don't take the book so seriously. And we don't worship the Bible. And the problem is, when you start talking about the Bible as the Word of God and Jesus as the Word of God, Muslims are going to start putting these two together. And it's very interesting when you talk to Muslims about these kinds of things. So it's important to know what Muslims believe and how they are different from Buddhists, because Buddhism also influenced our Western cultures, Christian cultures a lot, even in the East. Well, in the East especially more, because they are the actual Buddhists and Muslims there. But when you think about all this yin and yang stuff, and the trying to relax and meditate and these kinds of things, like that's pure Buddhist teaching coming into Christianity. And not that meditation in itself is wrong, but we should be careful when we talk about meditation, especially when talking to Buddhists and Buddhist background believers, that we know what these words mean, that we know what Buddhism is, so we can be clear to share the message as clearly as possible. And this is where I think we get back to that word that we mentioned in the last episode, but I think we can get more into detail with it today, about contextualization. So, Karen, I'm going to put you on the
Yes.
spot to explain us what contextualization is.
I will explain in English, no, in Spanish. It's no, for I would say like how I understand in English, because it's very easy for me to say like the meaning in the Spanish. But like the contextualization, it's the practice to learn about the culture of a different group of people, or a country. Or so we have to learn about the languages. We have to learn about like the practices or parties that they are doing, or special dates. We have to learn how the people eat around or how's the connection with their families. What's the context between a man and the roles, even the man or a woman. Yeah, like how they treat the kids. What's the problems that they are facing right now in this place, because also this affects the context, the cultural thing. So the contextualization, it's like the time before and act right now, like how we are going to learn about the other people, and how we are going to like clearly deep go inside this group of people, and in a way that we are not going to offend what they are so it helps. And it's right, MJ, or it's missing something.
No, no, I think what you're saying is right. I also think it's
Okay.
important to frame it in the sense of missions and evangelism,
Mhm.
because for practical sake, let's divide missions and evangelism now. Like, evangelism is when you're sharing with your own people, your own culture, your own language, the things you're familiar with. And missions will take more in the direction of people. You're going to people who are different language, different culture, different religion. So when you contextualize, it's not really that necessary when I, as an Afrikaans person, speak to another Afrikaans person, or you, as a Mexican, speak to another Mexican, because you're the same language, you think the same, you understand each other perfectly. But when I, as an Afrikaans person, want to go to Mexico and speak to Mexicans, I probably have to learn how to speak some Spanish, because apparently
How to
Mexicans
be
aren't.
more expressive? How to be more expressive?
Yeah, let's not get started on that debate. But Yeah, so I'm probably gonna have to learn that. I'm gonna have to learn how to eat Mexican food, or else I'm gonna die in Mexico, because traditional Afrikaans food is more like meat, potato, and sugar. So if you're not used to eating a lot of chilies, your stomach's gonna give out on you, and that's what we mean with contextualization. Like, you're fitting into that new culture. But also, what's more important about contextualization, more than just you fitting in, it's you're trying to breach the gap so other people can understand you better when you share the gospel, when you talk about the Bible. So if you're going to a Muslim or a Buddhist, you're going to have to understand how Muslims think, what Muslims believe, and how to effectively share the gospel and teach the Bible to Muslims. If you're going to a Buddhist, you're going to have to learn how Buddhists think and how Buddhists speaks and what Buddhists believe, and you're going to have to take the context of that Buddhist to share the gospel with them more effectively. Because if I would go to the Middle East and start speaking to Muslims in Afrikaans in a way that I know evangelism works here in the streets in South Africa, it's not going to work in the Middle East. I'm going to be a very ineffective witness for Christ there. But if I learn to speak Arabic and I know how to fit into their culture and how to bring the message across in a way that they understand, that's contextualization, and that's trying to be effective, especially in missions. But also, I think a reason why most people and even evangelists today need to study or practice contextualization is our world is becoming very globalized. In the sense, not just that we share a culture lately, like we discussed in the previous episode, but also all the cultures are living everywhere. Well, South Africa is a super multicultural country, but when I spoke to you, Karen, before about Mexico, you're saying like Mexico is also experiencing that shift, that you can see things are happening that you wouldn't have seen in the past in Mexico. So
Yes.
where I live, even though my country is super multicultural, so I would have seen some gomas, like witch doctors, not technically the right word, but I would see some gomas and African traditional leaders and stuff on the street frequently. It wasn't weird. But I never met a single Muslim. Today, the Muslims are living among us. I can sit in my home and hear the Muslim call to prayer. And man, it's becoming really interesting what's happening. But Karen, what does this looks like more from your Mexican side?
Like, well, before I get to that part, I will say, like, as missionaries, we don't have to assume that we know the culture. Because if we arrive to this group of people to eh, whatever, and we don't know, like, the rules and the methods and the practices, we are going to, instead to have this kind of gap, we are going to make a bigger gap. So we don't have to assume. And yeah, and something that we were mentioned before we start the record also, it's like South Africa, it's a good place to go because um you can know different religions, you can know also different practices, because even the Africans have, it's like really really dividing different type of group of people, and that's so interesting. It's not like we don't just have the Christians and the Catholics right now, but it's a good place to go if you want to do missions, or if you want to practice your contextualization. Yeah, but yeah, right now we all know all the times here are changing, and now we are like facing like more different group of people here in Mexico, even when the history it's like Christians and Catholics. But right now, because I guess like all the people is getting like information for all, like right now, like there's people to say like, okay, I will not believe nothing. There's the people that will say like, I will do like this part of the yoga and the natural things and all with the nature, right? And now it's like people that will say like, yeah, I'm a Catholic. I'm not practicing the Catholicism, but I'm a Catholic. Yeah, like right now. There's like the Christians, and now here in Mexico, you can see like the big churches, like the huge group of churches. And there's like this group of people that just go on Sundays and they went, even if they in the week they are not practicing the Christianity or how to walk with Jesus. But yeah, right now we are in Mexico. We are facing this way. Even the old people, because the old people will say like, no, I'm still being a Catholic. But if you look to my generation, to the youngest generations, you will see like these different ways to think about it. So yeah, right now, and what I'm saying is, but we don't have to assume something. It's because when I was in Africa, during all the course in the 6 months that I spent there, like we spent 1 week to learn about the main religions in the world, and we learned like one of the religion in Africa. And in the mornings we have like the lessons. Okay, what's the Islam, what the Buddhism, and we start like learning about the. Also, we learn about the Jews, and yeah. So we study like these religions, and in the afternoons, we went out to see like these religions in practice. Like, and something that when we start getting out and go for like a mesquite, or how to say it in English, the temple of the Islams,
Oh, the
of the Islam,
mosque.
the mosque. Thank you. Almost. And something that we receive as an advice, it's like, don't speak about Jesus. And I know it sounds like, why, right? But instead to try to the people know Jesus, first you have to learn why they are believing in the Islam. What does the Quran say? Why they decide to practice? Why, like, first to, as you say, to break the gap. First, we have to learn why the people are doing what they are doing, why they are practicing. Because if we arrive, I will say, in this way, like the Christians are the best, and everyone have to know about Jesus, and this is the moment, like you will never make this kind of relation with the people outside, because you're not interested in what people is saying, what they are living. Instead, you are just putting your own beliefs first and try to get the people to the Christianity, and it will never work, right?
Yeah, one of the things I always repeat is don't try and win the argument, win the person.
Uh,
And it's knowing how to recite all of the good Christian doctrines and how to fight with an Islamist and prove that their religion is the worst is not the same as evangelizing to a Muslim. It is not the
mhm.
same as living out Christ to an Islamist so they can understand what Christ is and how they can accept Christianity. And this you hear a lot from the people who work with Muslims, and the Muslims will often say of Christian missionaries that they are the perfect Islamists. They should just start going to the mosque and they will be the perfect Muslim. And the Christians always answer, yeah, but here is where we're different. And you see now you got something in that Muslim, because the Muslim can see that you're not trying to oppose them, you're not trying to fight with them. You are living with them.
Yeah.
You became their friend. And now they actually become interested in Christianity, even though they are trying to convince you to become Muslim and you're sitting there listening to them. But what happens in that listening to them, winning their respect, is now they also respect you and they will give you the same opportunity to share what you actually believe, because they're going to listen now because they are trying to convince you and they want to be your friends. And with Islam, this is actually very easy because Islam is how can we say, evangelical in the same way that Christians are, because they want to reach other people with the Muslim faith.
Yes.
So they
Yes.
will really engage with a good conversation when they notice that someone's open to listening to their point of view. It's a completely different conversation that you're going to be having. And in that openness that a Muslim gives you, there you have the perfect opportunity to teach them the gospel, to share them the gospel, and to present them the
Yes.
opportunity to accept Christ. But if you're just going to try and point out all the reasons why the Quran is a false book, they're never going to listen to you. And the problem with faith is that if we believe something, we believe it. We don't believe in something because it makes logically sense. We don't believe something because we are looking at the evidence and it looks right. Most of the times when we believe things without evidence, without it really making sense. And most people never really think about this. That's why
Yes.
always, what do you believe? Why do you believe it? Is it in line with what the Bible actually says? Always measure yourself. And then when you speak to someone else and you're telling them like, hey, I know that I get things wrong. I know that my my opinion is not perfect. And here is what I see as the truth, the Bible and Christ. And then people will be actively engaging and well, maybe attacking your measure of truth, but you don't need to defend the measure of truth because it is the measure. But
Yeah.
if you're willing to admit that I'm wrong, I can learn from you, people's attitude really change a lot. And I mean, this also happens in churches. When I think about the story you shared about your father as a Baptist sitting down with a charismatic when the charismatic was trying to say like, oh, I'm not going to agree with all the Baptist things. Your dad just said, wait, let's just sit and read the Bible and see what it says. We're not going to fight over our opinions. The same actually works with a Muslim as well. When you say like, we're not going to start attacking each other's belief. Let's just talk about what we actually believe. And
Yes.
because the gospel is actually the truth, it will always be the better message. Because Christ is always the ultimate measure and the Holy Spirit is working in the Muslim's heart, calling him towards faith. It's just way more effective. The Muslim can sit there and talk all you want, but it's just human things. But when you share it, you're actually partaking in a supernatural conversation, and that's way more powerful than winning any argument, because now you're reaching that person's heart in a way that normal human argumentation never can.
Yes. So like doing like this kind of questions breaks the gap and allows you to know the people, and the people can enter in this part of to be confident with you, and they are just start talking, because as you say, like if we make like this method of why, like it's that you are showing that you are interested in their lives, and you're not just interested in their lives because you want to share the gospel. It's because you want to make this relationship to bring the gospel, right? So I was like remember one of the days that MJ and I were together in the preaching in the in the departments.
What
You
you talk
remember
about when
door
we
to
did
door?
street evangelism?
Yes, a street evangelism, and we were like in the houses around, and we were like just knocking the door, and something that we mentioned first was like, oh, we're people from around the world, and in the doors, like when the people start listening that we are people of different parts, like they just, why are you together, like just here knocking the door, like, and that's cool, like we can like work together and bring the gospel. And one of the doors, there's a guy, it was like 18 years old, and we start like, okay, we are from different parts and blah blah blah. And before to say like we are like Jesus followers, like we start asking like, what's your belief? And something that catch my mind is like he was like, yes, I'm Muslim, I'm in the Islam. And we start like, oh, why you are there, why you decide to be there? And he was like, no, I don't make this decision. And we start like, why? Like it's something to that someone input to you. And he was like, no, because who my family is, so I'm also. And we're like trying to learn what's like all the background, because most of the religions is nothing that the people is chosen. It's something that were is this and nothing else. So even like right now, the people, maybe it's old or now the new generations, they are just putting there without this part to make a real decision. So that's something at one point where we can work, even when we are sharing the gospel or making this type of, because in our own religion, like this is the God that say like, this is the truth, this is what is not the truth. You can make a decision of this. And what we experience there, it's like we can learn like how all the people is just getting there, and we can learn like what they are facing right now. So as you said, like it breaks these gaps. So also in these practices when we were in the mosque, like to just sit down and talk about whatever about the cultures, the different cultures, and also it's helpful because even when I went to the mosque, I meet a lady with her daughter, and then we went to the school, and the daughter was studying there, so she recognized me and said like, you were like in the mosque, blah 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 blah. And after that, in the school, like her mother also see us, and she said like, oh, come on to my house and just have a brunch together. And when we were in the house of this lady, we don't talk about anything about the Bible, anything about the religion. And we just like talking about how was the marriage, how's the difference in the weddings. And we are just like making this like beautiful conversation of four ladies over there, to just to hear each other and to learn about each other. So, and at the end, of course, we share the gospel. But what we've done before in the previous dates, it's really helped us to open this door and to say like, now what you have to tell me. You already know me. You already make like this kind of relationship, even if it was like a short relationship. But maybe I will never see this lady and her family, never, hopefully in the heaven. but but it really helps. So to make the contextualization maybe can be hard, because it's something that you are not going to be comfortable, because it's like you are learning, but also you are accepting what they are, and you are accepting those differences to open this door and have this kind of relation. So I will say, when we are like when we are missionaries, we have to know that nothing in the mission will be comfortable, MJ, because there's something always with one thing that we are going to struggle, even the food, even the clothes, the roles in the family, the roles in the society. Like we are going to struggle because it's something that we are not used to. So I was like also thinking like, there's a family, a Muslim family, that they invite us to have dinner with them. Well, the whole group, and they invite us, and it shocks. I will say it make like a crush, yeah, a cultural crush, because the mother of this in the family, like she was like, how your parents allowed these three girls to cross around the world and arrive here to Africa. And I have to say, like, my parents don't have problems that I'm as a girl, I'm alone traveling. But she is a mother said like my daughters will never go out of the house without a man. And of course, cultural, you're like, I'm free to go wherever I want. I don't have to wait for someone to be at my side. So this kind of like, and you will say that's like a little thing, but also that will affect how the way you are going to talk, how the way you are going to introduce who you are, how the way that you are going to introduce also your cultural. But as you say, like it's not just like fitting in and try, but it will help. So do contextualization.
Yeah. Building a relationship with people actually helps to have a conversation with them. And if you can have a good conversation with them, it helps to share the gospel more effectively. I mean, obviously, you don't contextualize when it comes to your faith and what the gospel is. You don't bring Islam into the gospel,
Yeah,
but there's a lot of cultural things that doesn't matter, like what kind of food you eat, the gender practices, because man, we we in the West is very shocked when we find out that the rest of the world doesn't think like we do. And this is an important thing that, hey, people, we are not the same. People are different. We have different opinions, we have different traditions, we have different habits. And learning someone else's tradition will open up a whole new world of opportunities to share the gospel with them. And yeah, you do find hit and run evangelism, and then what we do with contextualization, where you build relationship in evangelism. So, hit and run will be the more classical thing where you give someone a tract and ask them, like, if you die, where will you be when you wake up? But then you assume that people already understand the division of heaven and hell, and you already assume that they understand that they have to believe in Christ to be saved. And it's just most people don't know that anymore because they're not even Christian in the first place. And I think a lot of Christians don't even understand this anymore. Like, I remember when I went with you and the Swedish girl that we did the evangelism with, and we would walk in the street, and when people said that there are Christians, your guys' first reaction was, okay, they're Christian, we can go talk to someone else. And I'm like, wait. What does this person mean when they say they're Christian? And it's like a lot of times when you talk to them, they don't even understand why they're Christian. The same way that you spoke about that Muslim guy who's like, I never made a decision. I'm just Muslim because
Mhm.
that's what I am. A lot of people are Christian just because it's what they are. They don't understand the message. They never really believed in Christ. They're just Christian because they're Christian. And as
Mhm.
we know, biblically speaking, they're not Christian. They are just
Clearly.
as lost as the Muslim. But
Yeah.
relationship, that's where it comes in. Understanding people, becoming that person's friend, being allowed to enter into their personal space so you can bridge that gap. Like, hit and run evangelism only works when people already know the gospel, but they choose not to believe it. But we live in a world where most people don't know the gospel. Even Christians don't know the gospel. Muslims and Buddhists even doesn't know the gospel. So you need to get that person to open up to you so you can tell them the gospel. And unfortunately, that's not a quick process, especially the larger the difference is, the more the gap in tradition and language and culture is, the harder it is to breach it. I mean, I spoke about this before. When you come to South Africa, you'll see that we're still divided between cultural groups, even though we are this multicultural country. But when you mentioned it, when you talk to the different black cultures, you'll notice that even they don't really mix, and there are some cultures that don't really like each other, and they have different practices, they have completely different languages, a common mistake. people think when they come to this country is to think that all black people speak the same language. It's no, they speak various different languages. But when you can actually connect with a person, now you understand each other. Now your friends might be pushing it a bit, but you have a relationship. You trust each other to an extent. They are opening up with what they believe. You can open up with what you believe. You're in this perfect relationship now where you can share the gospel clearly like you can't with hit and run evangelism. Because imagine running up to a Buddhist and asking him, like, if you die and you appear before God, what reason will you give him to appear in heaven? You know, the classic evangelism question.
Yeah.
And a Buddhist will look at you and be like, what God? I don't believe in a God.
What?
So you,
Yeah.
it's just our world has become so much more complicated, and that's why I'm thinking this fits really well with our previous episode where we talked about, is there only one true church, is there only one true gospel? And the answer is yes. And all of these differences of what food do we eat, what philosophies do people believe and stuff, that falls away. It's not important. But if you talk to people who don't believe in the gospel, who isn't part of the church, those differences are all they have. And they're going to focus on those differences and defend against and use those differences to attack and defend against the truth. So they don't have to accept the truth because this is who they are, this is what they are. Like that guy who's, I am a Muslim. I don't even know if I believe this or not, but this is what I am. And trying to convince him that Islam is wrong is like attacking him, like saying, you're wrong, you're bad. And
Yes.
it's really complicated, and we need to be careful how we talk with people.
Yes. And like in this way, MJ, like it's something that I noticed when I went in Africa, because like here in Mexico and in my church, and I know that maybe in many churches, when we make like evangelism in the streets, we just approach the people and say like, if you don't believe, you're going to go to the hell. I'm done. Yeah, like, and when I return, I confront my dad, and I will say like, why we always the all the courses that came to the church to show how to evangelize the people, why never we have to try to know why the people are believing in that? Because my church is a missionary church, I will say it like that, because we are like focusing in this part, right, to go and share the gospel. This is the main ministry in the church. So, and I was like asking my dad, like, we just arrive with the people and we just like, this is the gospel, bye. So, and I was like, why we never try to learn about what they are believing? Why we never try to make this kind of relationship? Because I was in the university, I have a friend, and I was like, oh, come to this activity in the church, we're going to do this and this and this and this and this, because I was trying to get him into, yeah, to try to that he can learn. And he was like Catholic, and the whole family was Catholic, like really Catholic. And suddenly he asked me something, and he asked, well, I was like 18 years old, no, 19, 20 maybe. And so in that moment, I don't know nothing about the contextualization. So like he say like, okay, I will go to that activity into your church, but then you have to go to my church and be there. And this was my reaction. Why? Because what I'm, yes, because what I'm showing to you is the truth. And you're going to take me to your church to see what? And I never went to the church. I will say I will never went to his church, his church, because as Christians, maybe I will say like we are the tops, and we don't want to learn about the others, and that's a mistake. Because maybe if in that moment, if I went, maybe I can know what they are learning, maybe I can know what they are practicing, and as you say, like we can make these kind of relations, and then we can make the gospel, and we can show, so we can teach the gospel, like knowing each difference. So if we don't know the difference, if we don't know the cultural, if we don't know what they are learning, practicing, whatever, we never make this, never broke this gap. So I will say, like in that moment, I will never think in my mind that I will become like a missionary in this way. But right now, when I'm saying like we just came with the gospel to say like you are in the wrong way and you have to believe, and just like, and of course the people is going to say no, because it's instead to say like something that we are really sharing is something that we are inputting, right? So we have to practice this kind, and we have to learn about all the people. Like right now, instead to start sharing the gospel as a command, I'm start sharing the gospel as I'm learning in Africa. First, ask, first build this relationship and be interested about the life of the people, so you can arrive. Because I will say easier it's easier to share the gospel when you have this way to learn about the people. And I was like thinking in the story of Jesus when he was in the Samaritan lady.
Oh, yeah, the woman at the well.
Yes, yes, and of course Jesus was Jesus. But something that he started is like sharing the way that she was living, and he points about that. Of course, Jesus knows everything, and he of course knows what the this lady was living, but he knows that. And maybe if he never shared this part of her life, maybe he never broke this gap. But Jesus knows what this lady was living, and he knows the way that he can approach her. Sorry, so he can approach, and this part was the open door, and so he does in contextualization.
Yeah. I also think a thing that we need to be careful of, because I did the same before I got missions training. It's like you accept someone else already knows the gospel and you almost go like on the attack, like, oh, you're bad, you're terrible, you're on the way to hell, you're not as good as I am, you should believe what I believe. I'm like, man, that's foolish, that's pride. And it's not pride in the gospel in Christ, it's pride in myself sometimes because look at me, I have the gospel, I'm this good person handing you the tract and telling you what you should believe. And I think that's a thing that we need to be careful of, and it's something that happens that we don't really know it's happening until we see it from a different perspective. Like, imagine a Muslim does this to you, and a Muslim walks up to you and hands you a Quran or something, and they tell you, like, oh, Islam is true, and you have to believe Islam or else you're going to hell. Yeah, I'm like, who the hell is this guy? I'm not going to listen to what he's saying. So we need to approach
Yes.
people with the same love and care and tenderness that we want them to approach us with their things. It's like, treat people like you want to be treated. I mean, it's it's
Mm-hmm.
it's not that difficult, but it's very difficult at exactly the same time.
Yes, and as I say, because it's not comfortable. It's not really comfortable to try to understand the other people, and and just to put your ideas, like I will sh- shut up, and it's difficult not to do that because of course we know the truth, right? And we our desire is like, uh it's not that, it's that. So it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to start learning another language. It's comfortable to change the way that you are your outfits, because it's uncomfortable. Like, for example, when I was in Africa, I can wear skinny jeans, I can wear like the short t-shirts, like, and I was like, I always used to wear like skirts, like not too much little, but so I was like, and I tell to my mom, I have to go before I went to Africa. I have to go and buy clothes because something that it's needed, and it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable to leave your own cultural beliefs and practices to get and start knowing another one. But I will say, like, it's helpful because if you don't follow this part of contextualization, you will never, 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 never get this type of relationship. So I would say, like, it's not comfortable because you really struggle with that. You struggle when people think different about you. You struggle with people that are practicing different kind of things. I'm a struggle when in Africa say like, no, a man always have to be with you, and I was like, I'm kidding. I can be alone, and of course not. We have to understand why the girls cannot be alone in Africa, cannot be alone in this and this and this. We have to, and instead to get angry because at the beginning I was like, why? But instead to get angry, we have to understand why. Because of course, the missions will always take out of our comfortable zone, and we have to understand that. So when we make the trips to Cuba, the missionary trips to Cuba, I I always say to the people that is going to go with us. Maybe we don't will be like 100 degrees of hot. Maybe you're not going to have internet because when you arrive to Cuba, the phones doesn't work. So you will not have internet, you will not have communication with your family, you're not going to have Facebook, Instagram, nothing. You're going to be completely disconnected about the world. The food, 3 times a day, you are going to eat rice. Yeah, like, and you're not going to have like in Mexico we used to have like big breakfast. So you're not going to have this breakfast. You're just going to have like your espresso in the morning, and that's all. So, and also about we don't have air conditioner. There's light for 3 hours in the day. The other time it's without. Yeah, so you have to try to see how you're going to work over there. So, and if I make a list, maybe the people will say like, I don't want to struggle with that. So that's the reason the missions are uncomfortable, and the missions put you out of your zone of comfort. But it's something that I will say I really enjoy this part because it really touched me. And this experience really changed the way that I was sharing the gospel and the way that we can reach people and the way that we can make relationships so we can share in a good way the gospel.
Yeah, I also have to say that probably the biggest reason why we didn't allow you girls to go out alone is because a lot of the places where we went were extremely dangerous. And it's even the people
Yes.
who live there tell you, like, no, a lady can't walk alone in the streets because
Yes.
something's going to happen to her and it's going to be very bad. So, yeah, it's a bit of cultural, but also, yeah, unfortunately, our country isn't on the top of human trafficking and murder rates because only good things happen here. But yeah, I mean Mexico. When we hear Mexico, we think drugs and cartels. So you can probably tell us about that on the other side. But um, no, I think the thing is just when we talk about contextualization, it's actually caring about people and loving people enough to sacrifice my own comfort So I can
Yes.
put up with what they're saying, even if I don't like it, even if I don't agree with it, so that I can share them the gospel. So it's basically a sacrificing of self in order that
Yes.
I can share the gospel. And I mean, when part of the training that we gave you guys, I don't know if you did it, but we go to a mosque for an entire day. I think you did it, right? Yeah, and then
Yes.
it's a couple of hours sitting there in a Muslim teaching, and they're teaching you about Islam and trying to convert you. And it's so boring and annoying. And especially the brand of Muslims we have here try to convince you that Islam and Christianity is the same religion because they also believe in
Yes.
the perpetual virginity of Mary, which is like, I'm not a Catholic. I don't care if Mary was a virgin or not. It doesn't matter. Um, but they'll try to convince you all of these things and keep you busy for a long time with all of their stuff. But then in the end, they allow you to have a conversation that goes both ways and you're allowed to share what you believe. And what I found
Yes.
oftentimes after all of their speaking and stuff, what really works in that context is you just ask the Muslim, like, are you sure that Allah will accept you when you die? That He will allow you into heaven? And all of the Muslims answer no. And this is where you can show, but
No.
in Christianity, I am absolutely sure that I'm going in heaven if I believe in Jesus. And
Yes.
there you're in a mosque listening to Muslim teaching, and you're actually asking them a question about their own religion because you understand what they believe. And they don't have a good answer to you. And you can see that they are trying to defend their own faith, but they really can't defend themselves against the gospel. The only reason why
Yes.
they reject it is they don't want to believe it. But
Yes. And
yeah, no,
no, I was like saying, like, when we start like doing these type of questions, you always go back to what the Bible said, because they are like, do you believe about the love of God? And they are like, yes. And I say like, I believe in the love of God because He sent His own Son for. No, 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 no. God doesn't love like too much. Like He's God. He never will never do that. And I was like, and this in this part, it's like, but you already say that you believe in God's love. Do you believe that God is love? And like, yes. So yes, but He don't love us like too much to be near with Him. So and with so I will say like asking these type of questions help to you to see what's the Bible saying, because in the Bible said like love is God and love loves so much the word that He sent His own Son. So when we are doing like this type of questions, we have the opportunity to say like, okay, but if you believe in this, and you start like making like trying to confront their faith also about the sin, because I was like, we also go for a school. So there's a school in Africa. If you want to become a Muslim, you can go to the school and then ding, you have your degree to be a Muslim. But in the school, like the people is like they came people that is not Muslim, and yeah, you can learn about the Islam and all the culture and about the sin. And I was like really shocked about that, because one day I was saying like, so you believe in the sin? Yes. So what's the sin? Yeah, the sin is all the bad things we do against people, against God, and okay. And I would say like, so all here we are sinners. Yes, but if you stole something, it's sin. And I was like, yes, still stuffs are sins. But if you steal something to help your family, that is not a sin. But I was like, no, but you're like taking off the yeah, you're taking off stuff for another people just to see like, oh, my family needs this, right? Yeah, 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 but you are doing in a good intention. And I was like, okay, so there's sin, but there's sin with good intention. It doesn't work as in. And she said like, yeah, like for example, if you go to my house and you kill all my family, that's a sin. Yeah, and I was like, yes, kill people, it's sin. Yeah, but if I after that I came to your house and I killed your family, it's not a sin because I'm like taking revenge. And I was like, no, come on. So, and we can make like these kind of debates, but because as I said, okay, so the revenge is it's not in our hands, it's in God's hands. And what I find in with the Muslims is like the people, they're like they have the ideas, but the ideas are just broke because they are practicing something else, and they have their ideas, but in one way it's broke because it's something different in what they are saying and believing. So it's like it's broken that part, but it helps. It really helps just to learn to ask, and yeah, and of course God always give you like the way where you can share the gospel.
Yeah, I think this is a good time to end also because we can sit for a long time and talk about these kinds of things.
Yes, there's a lot of stories.
But my closing remark I want to make is that don't be afraid to learn about different religions because the more you learn about different religions, the more you see how unique Christianity is, how unique the gospel is. There's just nothing else like this out there. And when you start seeing what other people trust in, what other people believe in, it starts to become more clear what the Bible actually teaches and how we are different. It helps give you some perspective. So, learning about Islam, learning about Buddhism, Hinduism, and all of these things isn't necessarily bad because it can help you to grow in your understanding of what you actually believe and how to understand the Bible and how to share your faith. Karen, do you have any
Yeah.
closing remarks?
Yes, I will say like um never forget the truth that God already put in your heart, but also don't assume that you know the people, and doesn't assume that people will listen without this first that you can learn about the people. It's difficult, it's uncomfortable, but it's the best way that we can reach people because we are going to learn about them, and we can teach gospel, and we can teach the gospel in a good real way.
Yeah, I think that is a good place to end. So, up until next time, see ya.
See you.